right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on Sports.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. What a Monday night it was in the sports equinox. We had the National Hockey League. We had some NBA action. Not sure if any of you were watching that last night because we also had Monday Night Football, and we had the World Series played by the Dodgers and New York Yankees. Remember that World Series that was supposed to be these 2 titans facing off against each other? Craig Mish comes on the air and says this thing's going to go like 6-7 games, probably. Well, I was wrong. Los Angeles Dodgers are in the driver's seat, and they're on the 1-yard line, and they're in the 9th inning. And every adjective and every narrative you can use. Folks, they're up 3-0 in the series, in the World Series, and no one has ever come back to win a World Series down 0-3. They win in the Bronx last night by a final of 4-2. Freddie Freeman right now is on track to win the World Series MVP, regardless if this thing goes 5 games or 6 games. But the Dodgers have gotten great pitching, great defense, as you see there, timely hitting as well, and Freeman's really led the way with some really big hits. 5 straight consecutive World Series games with a home run. This despite Shohei Ohtani being hurt, still played in that game yesterday. Offense has struggled for the Yankees at times this season, and unfortunately it struggled again in the World Series as well. And as of right now, Aaron Boone knows this team is up against it.
Aaron, only one team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit in World Series history. How do you like your chances heading into Game 4?
We're trying to get a game tomorrow. Okay? That's where our focus lies. So hopefully we can, go be this amazing story and shock the world. But right now it's about trying to get a lead, trying to grab a game and force another one, and then on from there. But we got to grab one first.
Really good answer from the manager of the Yankees, Aaron Boone. But let's just keep it real for a moment. Dodgers need to win one game out of the next 4 to win the World Series. So they're just going to throw a bullpen game today, knowing that they got all systems go starting in Game 5 if they need it. That's why the Yankees are favored tonight over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. They're minus 148 because the Yankees have Luis Gil pitching, and he'll be better and go deeper into the game than anybody on the Dodgers. And, some people may be surprised with that line to see the Yankees this big a favorite. But generally speaking, when the team is up 3-0 in the World Series, they want to put their foot on the throat, so to speak. But the Dodgers don't really need to do that. They have a lot of good pitchers that can pitch in Game 5, 6, and 7, as we know. All right, now over to Monday Night Football we go. And a slog in the first half turned out to be an actually very exciting game in the second half between the Giants and Steelers. The Steelers end up winning this game, covering the spread, and also goes over the total, which is a surprise, I know, to most on Monday Night Football. Total of, as you see there, 26, was it, Luke, to 18? That was the final score there. And goes over the total in this one. A solid game for Russell Wilson. The Steelers just keep on winning. And they've been doing it in the air. They've been doing it on the ground and throwing some really nice passes late in the game. And, of course, scoring on special teams is what the Steelers do best. Nationally after the game, Mike Tomlin talked about not really wanting style points to win games against a team like the Giants, but simply wanting to win.
Man, really appreciative of our efforts. It wasn't as fluid as we'd like, man, but that's football. we got to guard against style points and things of that nature, man. It was prime time television and football against a team that came in here with a good mindset. We shot ourselves in the foot some early, man, settling for 3. We gave up a couple big plays that allowed them to generate some scoring drives. They kicked 3. But I just like the overall look of the group at halftime. We acknowledged where we were. We acknowledged we needed some plays, man, to break this thing open. And I had a bunch of guys that wanted to be the reason why we were successful. Can't say enough about Calvin, man. I just thought, that's a big play. That punt return, man, was a catalyst for us. Again, as I mentioned, we just got a lot of guys that want to be the reasons why. T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, man, I thought really provided really consistent pressure, particularly in the second half. We're just thankful to be 6-2 at the turn. We need this downtime, man, to get some guys healthy. We had some bumps and bruises associated with play, but I think that everyone that went down in game was able to return. I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Well, my only question is, how far can the Pittsburgh Steelers go? I guess the question for the New York Giants is, what do they do at quarterback? Another tough game for the Giants. They were actually in this game late, but Daniel Jones was strip sacked by T.J. Watt. Guess who? Talked about him yesterday. With 3 minutes left, leading to a turnover. Brian Daboll may have to make a big decision going into next week's game, but as of now, he at least talked about what happened last night.
Are you saying on the chip play, are you saying Daniel didn't make the right check, or are you saying it didn't get...
It wasn't a check. He was going, pressure situation was a clock. We had a shift with the tight end to get back over to Watt, and we didn't get the shift. So we talked about it in the locker room. DJ feels terrible, to be honest with you. And I know he's going to own it. He came up here to say he owned it. There was a shift that was accompanying the play. He was kind of surveying the coverage, deciding what he wanted to do, and we didn't get the shift. And they were lining up with him in different, sometimes they were lining up with him left a little bit more than they have. So we were making sure that if we put a chipper there, that he didn't line up opposite, so we were shifting to try to get the help where we needed to get the help.
Another lost season in progress for the New York Giants. Meanwhile, the Kansas City Chiefs keep on making trades. The deadline is next week. They acquire a pass rusher for the New England Patriots who appear to be open for business. Josh Uche goes over for a 2026 sixth-round pick. He did not play in their win over the Jets. The Chicago Bears have to be seething after watching their teammate Tyreek Stevenson taunting the fans at the end of that Hail Mary. Stevenson apologized to the team for lack of awareness and said to Chicago and my teammates, my apologies for my lack of awareness and focus. This game ain't over until zeros hit the clock. He'll learn his lesson there. Meanwhile, have the Indianapolis Colts learned a lesson at quarterback? Kind of hard to say. Shane Steichen non-committal this week as to who will start at quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson is the starter. He's not played well this season. Joe Flacco is the backup, and he led the Browns late last season to the playoffs. So we'll see if a change is made there. The Packers, as of now, are not looking to make a change at quarterback, but if Jordan Love can't play this week with a strained groin, then Malik Willis could, but they're saying that he has a chance to play. Colorado's Travis Hunter becomes the first player ever to win the Big 12 Offensive and Defensive Player of the Week award in the same season, in the same week, in the Buffalo's Week 9 win over Cincinnati. He set a single-game career for pass breakups with 4, and he had 153 receiving yards in the game. Penn State's quarterback Drew Aller will be a game-time decision against Ohio State. We'll see if he plays this week. Ben Stevens will be along in just a few minutes with a preview there. The University of Central Florida has seen enough of their defense. They fired their defensive coordinator, Ted Roof, just 8 games into the season. They're 1-4 in the Big 12. And there is a game in college football tonight. Florida Atlantic University, otherwise known as FIU, a 25-minute drive for me. 9-point favorites on the road tonight, taking on New Mexico State. In the NBA last night, Darius Garland had 34 points for the Cleveland Cavaliers in their victory against the New York Knicks. Guess who is hot? It is the Cavs. 4-0, undefeated at the start of the season. The Boston Celtics, they beat the Bucks down 119-108. Jaylen Brown with 30 points in the win. Damian Lillard, Giannis both had 30 points in the loss. Boston covered that one. The Phoenix Suns played yet another close game last night. This time they beat the Lakers 109-105. Kevin Booker had 33. Durant had 30 points. Sacramento beat Portland 111-98. First win for the Kings. De'Aaron Fox had 24 points. Big news in hockey, potentially a big injury to one of the best players in the National Hockey League. Connor McDavid left the game with a lower body injury yesterday. Also, the U.S. women's national team, Emma Hayes, won Women's Coach of the Year, and the Connecticut Sun and Stephanie White have parted ways after 2 seasons. We'll be right back.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Look, Aaron Rodgers, it does seem like he really enjoys, people like us, Vinny, talking about him.
I don't know what's going on here with Aaron Rodgers. I think there's some frustration settling in, and the Jets were not supposed to be this bad of a defense, right? They've had a lot of injuries. Maybe that's the thing here. Robert Saleh's influence is there. I know they have their defensive coordinator running things, but now he's distracted.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I always love checking in early in the week with Bill Bender from Sporting News as he starts to gauge some of the big games in college football. I didn't want to say this on the show last week because it would kind of ruin our mojo, Bill, but last week's college football schedule kind of stunk. I think it was the worst one. Now that it's out of the way, I can say it. But I was trying to find some silver linings last week in the games, and always I ask you first, what did we learn from last week? I don't really, you'll I don't want to steal your thunder. You'll mention one thing maybe that we learned, but beyond that, I don't know. Everything was kind of status quo. I mean, maybe Texas was down again for a second straight week. Maybe we learned that they were just genuinely not as good as we thought. But I feel like this week I'll get a better indication of things.
Well, and as we get into November, here's the thing: we're selling this 12-team playoff like this. As you get into November, we have 24 power conference teams and Notre Dame, so 25, that have 2 losses or less. So we're going to figure out, because I don't know that more than one 3-loss team would get in the playoff, or if any. So these next 5 weeks are kind of elimination games. You're dead on. It wasn't that the schedule was bad. It's that we didn't have much drama. Other than Ohio State kind of messing around with Nebraska, it was a very status quo weekend.
Yeah. And for me, it's rare because usually I'll come out of Saturday and Sunday always thinking Saturday was better. But Sunday, for me, the NFL was better than college football on Saturday. A lot of exciting finishes there. All right. So new poll Not that much change here. Here in South Florida, the Hurricane fans, Bill, despite a lot of close wins, they beat down FSU. A lot of people feel they should be number 3 in the country. I don't know how you feel about that, but a lot of Hurricanes fans think that they should be ranked higher. Beyond that, as I mentioned, Texas had a really hard time with Vanderbilt. That's one note that I at least wanted to provide. But very clearly, as we'll talk about later in the week, when you have Ohio State playing Penn State, that's the kind of game that we're looking for on a Saturday. And I think a lot more will be figured out this week.
Yeah, and particularly with Ohio State and Penn State, another top 5 showdown. Ohio State's won 9 of the last 10 meetings, but what were those questions that came out of Saturday? They didn't run the ball well. They had 64 yards rushing, 31 attempts. They've had some injuries on the offensive line. They couldn't push Nebraska off the ball. Will Howard's taking a lot of heat. I think it's ridiculous. He played very well. He was 9 of 9 in the first half, led the game-winning touchdown drive. Their defense is still playing well. And then on the other side, you mentioned it in the opening segment, with Drew Aller playing a game-time decision, that really impacts this game because it impacts Penn State's ability to throw the ball down the field. Bo Pribula is a completely different quarterback. He averages 6 yards per carry. I think if Aller doesn't play, it makes it that much easier for Ohio State to go in. Not easy, but they go into Happy Valley and win the football game.
Yeah, can't wait to see that one Saturday. I'm just happy that 2 teams ranked in the top 10 face off. I'm always into that. All right, so look, I despite what maybe some naysayers want to say about Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes, let's give them credit, Bill, because it was this time 1 year ago that the free fall began for them, and they just basically couldn't win a game. But this time around, with Dion or the coaching staff, players, I don't know, they figured out how to win. Much better job last week against Cincinnati. They've put themselves into the playoff conversation. I know they're a long shot at this point. I like a lot of other teams more than them at 6-1. I definitely do. But they did qualify for a bowl game, so congrats to them. Who knows? LSU, maybe they free fall. We could knock them out of there. SMU, can we really count on them winning the rest of their games? They'll probably have to get in. So, look, Colorado, they're at least in the discussion. Fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. They're 6-2. They have a lot of things. And by that, I mean 2 Heisman candidates. Travis Hunter, you mentioned, winning Player of the Week in offense and defense. Shedeur Sanders is inching closer to the FBS leader in touchdown passes. They are the only school in the country that has 2 players with 7 or more touchdown receptions, Travis Hunter and LeJontay Webster. And then they could get through November here. Texas Tech's a tricky game coming out of the bye week. They don't play a ranked opponent the rest of the year. And they've created a home field advantage in Boulder. So it is entirely possible that they finish 10-2, beating 10 unranked teams. I don't know if the committee puts them in. I think they might be tempted to. And I've been joking all week. Can we get an Oregon-Colorado first-round playoff matchup and they put the cameras on the pregame speeches simultaneously for both teams? They could sell that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so now your big takeaway from last week, and again, it is a fair assessment, Bill, and you and I were both on the same page here. We probably could have mentioned 5 teams in the SEC before we got to Texas A&M to think that they had any potential for anything this year. What does it say, by the way, about Jimbo Fisher? Let's be clear. This has been a really impressive season for them, regardless if they make it to the playoff.
Yeah, and I think the question now is, who do they turn to? Is it going to be Marcel Reed or Connor Wigman? Marcel Reed came in, ran for 3 touchdowns. They got that running game going, erased a 10-point deficit against LSU and a huge win. They are the only unbeaten team in conference play. Their schedule is set up. If they can get through South Carolina this weekend, which is a tricky road game, as you know, playing at night, Williams-Brice Stadium, ABC is going to be there. They're going to be amped up. And they play New Mexico State. Then they play Auburn. They're going to be 10-1 when they play Texas. And if that's something, I knew that game was going to be huge when Texas and Texas A&M were going to see each other. They haven't played forever. I didn't know that it could be a battle of 10-1 teams. So that's only going to add fire to what happens at Kyle Field if the Aggies can take care of their business. I think they're looking really good as a playoff team if you're betting on those things, because they would probably get in at 10-2 at this point. Their only losses to Notre Dame. It's not a bad loss.
No, 6 signature wins all season long for the Aggies. I don't want to steal our thunder for later in the week when we preview Penn State, Ohio State. So let's just go back real quick. What did you see this past week with the Buckeyes that was it a look-ahead situation with them? I mean, was their least impressive game of the season. In fact, I think against the spread, first 4 weeks, they like beat the number more than anybody else in college football or something. And other than, I think, Indiana, they were like the most impressive team ATS through the first few weeks of the season. What happened this past week?
I think the pressure is just building, and they've got to relax and just play football. The defense is fine. They have all that NFL talent. Nebraska played well. 18 to 22-year-olds came off a bad loss, played well the next week. I think Ohio State just relax a little bit, play football. You and I will talk a little bit later, and we'll break down Penn State in full. But, just play like that.
I agree. Bill, can't wait to talk later in the week. Have a good one.
Thank you.
That kid on the two-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Look, Aaron Rodgers, it does seem like he really enjoys, people like us, Vinny, talking about him.
I don't know what's going on here with Aaron Rodgers. I think there's some frustration settling in, and the Jets were not supposed to be this bad of a defense, right? They've had a lot of injuries. Maybe that's the thing here. Robert Saleh's influence is there. I know they have their defensive coordinator running things, but now he's distracted.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Time to talk some World Series here on the show. Hear from the manager of the Dodgers, also a player on the Yankees, as to where we stand in the series. We'll also get a preview on the big game in college football coming up this weekend. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. All right, well, it is time to is it time to say farewell to the New York Yankees? I know they're down 0-3. They could still come back. I mean, why are we talking about the Dodgers today and how good the Dodgers have been in this series? But no, we're going to hear from the Yankees. We'll talk about them maybe for the last time today and tomorrow. We will see. But certainly we know they are up against it going into Game 4 tonight. They're going to have to win the next 3 games just to get to a Game 7, generally speaking. This never pretty much happens. But Alex Verdugo seems to be pretty confident here and made the comment after the game last night, if the Dodgers could win 3 in a row, why not us?
Alex, do you have any reference about the 0-3 comeback in your life, or maybe your friends, something?
I mean, I've never seen it. I mean, I'm sure that you guys probably know that better than I do. I'm just a player, man. I play, and I know how good this team is, and I know that if that team wins 3 in a row, then why can't we win 3 in a row? So that's the way I look at it, and we're just going to keep going, and when it's over, it'll be over. But we want to go out there and put our best foot forward.
Thank you. Alex, do you have any reference about the 0-3 comeback live with maybe your friends, something?
I mean, I've never seen it. I mean, I'm sure that you guys probably know that better than I do. I'm just a player, man. I play, and I know how good this team is, and I know that if that team wins 3 in a row, then why can't we win 3 in a row? So that's the way I look at it, and we're just going to keep going, and when it's over, it'll be over. But we want to go out there and put our best foot forward.
Normally, you would say that a team like that's down 0-3 would have no pressure on them, but it's the Yankees, so there's always pressure there. Meanwhile, how about the manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, Dave Roberts? He is up 3-0 as the manager of the Dodgers, but he's also been on the other side of this, down 0-3 in the American League Championship Series in 2004 when the Red Sox came all the way back to beat the Yankees in the ALCS, and he talked about the fact that he's been on both sides.
You're one of the few people on earth who know what it's like to come back from a 3-0 deficit.
Don't talk about that. Wrong guy. Way too early.
What do you remember about your mindset going into that, and what maybe did you learn from that you can take into it now that you're on the other side?
From the other side, I don't want to divulge any secrets, but from the other side, I just think that we have got to stay focused, stay urgent. I think offensively, to be quite honest, we left a lot of runs out there tonight. Still found a way to win a ball game, and there's just got to be urgency. I just don't want to let these guys up for air.
And it makes sense. And also, I mean, there's a Netflix documentary right now on that 2004 Red Sox team that came back to beat the Yankees in the 2004 American League Championship Series. Highly recommended by me. All right, meanwhile, this weekend, I highly recommend you check out our college football programming all morning and all day Saturday, led by Ben Stevens, Joe Lisi, and company, as they get you ready for the upcoming week in college football. But let's give you a little bit of a head start and preview one of the big games this weekend. And, of course, it will be between Penn State and Ohio State. The team that wins firmly planted into the college football playoff. The team that loses probably needs to play better in the third quarter of the college football season. I'm talking too much. Let's get a preview. Here's Ben.
The best game of the first Saturday in November of this college football season is in Happy Valley on Saturday afternoon. It's a top 5 tilt. Number 3 Penn State plays host to number 4 Ohio State. The Buckeyes, a 3.5-point road favorite in State College. And the narratives of this game are going to be paramount. Ryan Day, during his tenure at Ohio State in his 6th full season, just 2-6 straight up against AP top 5 opponents. Penn State is that. On the other side, James Franklin, 1-9 in his decade at Penn State against Ohio State, and just 3-17 against AP top 10 teams. The Buckeyes are that. It is going to be a monumental showdown on Saturday in Happy Valley. Craig, back to you.
All right. Thanks very much, Ben. You know that when I see Gilbert McGregor coming up in our lineup here on the show, it means that the NBA is back. So happy to have Gilbert back, and we'll preview some of the games tonight in the NBA. Don't go away.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallize Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night, I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Look, Aaron Rodgers, it does seem like he really enjoys, people like us, Vinny, talking about him.
I don't know what's going on here with Aaron Rodgers. I think that there's some frustration settling in, and the Jets were not supposed to be this bad of a defense, right? They've had a lot of injuries. Maybe that's the thing here. Robert Saleh's influence is there. I know they have their defensive coordinator running things, but now he's distracted.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Before we talk some NBA, National Basketball Association, let's get back to the latest in Major League Baseball. For those of you who missed it last night, another big win for the Los Angeles Dodgers as they come through with a big win in the World Series. They're now up 3-0 in their best-of-7 series and are just one game away from winning it all. Final score last night was 4-2. As the Dodgers got an early home run from Freddie Freeman, and they were able to hold it down from there. Solid pitching, good hitting as well, but naturally, at this point of the series, coming down from 3-0 is more or less an impossibility, and that's where the Yankees stand going into tonight. After the game yesterday, Aaron Boone, not despondent, but just basically pragmatic about having to win one game.
Aaron, only one team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit in World Series history. How do you like your chances heading into Game 4?
We're trying to get a game tomorrow. Okay? That's where our focus lies. So hopefully we can, go be this amazing story and shock the world. But right now it's about trying to get a lead, trying to grab a game and force another one and then on from there. But we got to grab one first.
And getting the first one tonight as a big favorite, certainly in the cards. The Yankees are minus 148 on the money line this evening in the Bronx, as Luis Gil will make his World Series start. Again, minus 148, 8:08 Eastern Time. First pitch will be thrown out tonight in the Bronx. In the National Football League last night, the Giants took on the team that really has no boundaries as far as defense is concerned. They've been one of the best defensive teams for years in the NFL, and that turned out to be the case again yesterday. The Pittsburgh Steelers take care of business against the New York Giants and end up winning on Monday Night Football, mostly thanks to the defense that came through again. Also scored on a special teams touchdown. They covered the spread. This game did go over the total. Let's get to some NBA discussion as we bring in Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News. Gilbert, great to have you back. Happy NBA season.
Happy NBA season, Craig. It's great to be back.
Yeah, it's, honestly, off to a really fun start, I think. We've seen some surprising results, I think, from some. And from others, I think we've seen some disappointing results. But let's start off with the world champions, the Boston Celtics last night. They ended up taking care of business against one of the teams that they may have to beat along the way in the Milwaukee Bucks. And boy, Jaylen Brown with a monster game, 30 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. The Bucks right now probably going to have to make some changes, I would say, at some point. They haven't looked that great to open the year. But I got to tell you, the Celtics look like they've just picked up from where they left off.
I don't want to go too far too soon, but this Celtics team might be better than last year's team. You talk about what we saw them do to the Knicks on opening night and the fact they continue to take care of business. I know it's 4 games into the season, but Kristaps Porzingis isn't even back in the lineup yet. So when you think about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, hearing all the noise that came their way this offseason, this is a defending championship team that's much more motivated than your typical defending champions, and we're seeing it in their performances through the first week of the season, and that's a scary sight for the rest of the NBA.
Yeah, I would agree. And if Brown plays this well, forget about it, between him and Tatum and everybody else they have. All right, so the Lakers are not going to go undefeated this year. Gilbert, we learned that yesterday. The Lakers now focused on basketball as opposed to the father and son combo last night. And boy, their defense really let them down. Devin Booker with the monster game yesterday, 33 points in the 109-105 loss. Look, the Lakers are not going to win every single game. What's interesting to me is the Suns. For me, Gilbert, I know that they're a hot pick for a lot of people to have a really good season. They played a lot of close games and seem to be coming out on top.
Yeah, 82-0 is out of the question for the Lakers, but the Suns have been pretty impressive. This is a team that I think in this offseason addressed a lot of the issues that they had, brought in Tyus Jones to kind of give them a typical point guard or a more standard point guard to work with Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal. Bringing in a new head coach and Mike Budenholzer, I think, has cleaned some things up on the offensive end for them. And then Ryan Dunn, the rookie from Virginia, has been a revelation for them. So obviously you know what you're going to get from Kevin Durant. You know what you're going to get from Devin Booker. But to have those guys that they've brought in this offseason step up already early in the season, they're only going to get to know each other a little bit better throughout the season. And I think that bodes well for them as they look to contend in the Western Conference, which really seems like it's wide open this early in the season.
It does. All right, so let's get to some of the games tonight in the NBA, Gilbert, and we'll pick up where we left off last year. Dallas and Minnesota, the Timberwolves 5-point favorites. Of course, they're firing on all cylinders. Total 221.5 in this game. What do you make of the outcome here?
Dallas had an interesting game last night. Luka Doncic was a very uncharacteristic shooting performance from him. This is the rematch angle from last year's Western Conference Finals, but that second end of a back-to-back could mean something for Dallas, traveling from Dallas to Minnesota to play there tonight. So I do like the Timberwolves in this game. Both teams are incorporating new pieces, Klay Thompson in Dallas and Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo with the Timberwolves, but I just think that they have it on their minds. I think Anthony Edwards is out to prove a point, especially after how last year's Western Conference Finals ended.
All right, and tonight, another game that we'll all be keeping an eye on, and Gilbert, you'll have to update me if I miss something here, but I know Steph Curry is on the mend here at this point. Bad news for the Warriors early on in the season, and I guess that's why the Pelicans are 1.5-point favorites. They're not expecting Curry to play tonight, total of 217.5.
Yeah, this is the first end of a back-to-back between these two teams. They'll play again tomorrow in Golden State. No Steph Curry in either of those games. So I like the Pelicans for that reason. The Warriors have an interesting roster this year. It's kind of the sum of all parts around Steph Curry and Draymond Green. But without Steph Curry, obviously, you don't need me to tell you that all things kind of fall apart. Zion Williamson is still trying to figure things out. Had an off night on Sunday, so I think that's fresh on his mind. And the Pelicans are also dealing with injury. DeJounte Murray gets hurt in the season opener. But I think the Pelicans are looking for a win after a tough loss to the Trailblazers on Sunday, and they'll be motivated to get the job done in the Bay.
Yeah, would agree. All right, so now the key is the Western Conference this year because we're going into a season that opened up about a week ago where Oklahoma City was the favorite to come out of the West. They're still there, and I think they're going to be there for most of the season. I don't know if you agree with that, though, Gilbert. Plus 310 are their odds. What a great rebuilding job this team has done to get to this point. Then Minnesota's plus 490, pretty much on the strength of the early part of their season. Denver plus 550, Dallas 6-1, Phoenix 9-1, and then you're never going to get any good value with the Lakers. They got to throw them in there, so they're 13-1 as well. Who do you like here? All right, we lost Gilbert. We will see if we can get him back, but in the interim, let's tell you more about what's going on in the state of Florida. Some really interesting development yesterday. You may have heard the story of when Hard Rock was getting ready to launch their sports betting operation on the Hard Rock app via the Seminole Tribe. It was being blocked by a group for more than a year called West Flagler. West Flagler did not want them to operate. Well, West Flagler and the Seminole Tribe of Florida have now come to an agreement, and they will no longer be challenging their ability to have live sports wagering on the app. And the partnership right now means that highlight wagers, which is what West Flagler was really in contention with, because again, these highlight places are all over South Florida, all of the highlight wagers will be available on the Hard Rock app. So essentially, West Flagler is a company in South Florida that had the ability to have sports wagering at these different highlight facilities. Now that it's on the Hard Rock app, I guess they came to some kind of agreement, but there will be no more disputing as to whether or not in the state of Florida, the Seminole Tribe can operate a sports betting operation, and they will be able to. The only question for the future is whether or not the Seminole Tribe will have a monopoly over sports betting and whether or not FanDuel, DraftKings, or one of these other companies is able to come to an agreement with the Seminole Tribe to have some sort of partnership or some sort of revenue sharing to open up the sports betting operation beyond the Hard Rock app. All right, let's take a quick time out here on the show. We'll come back next. We'll dive into the very latest in sports betting and sports news as well, as Jacob Camenker joins us from the Sporting News. We'll preview some of the upcoming games in the NFL this week, including Thursday Night Football. So stay with us here on the Grid on NewsWire every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, exclusively here on SportsGrid. We'll be back right after this. Don't go away.
That kid on the two-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Look, Aaron Rodgers, it does seem like he really enjoys, people like us, Vinny, talking about him.
I don't know what's going on here with Aaron Rodgers. I think that there's some frustration settling in, and the Jets were not supposed to be this bad of a defense, right? They've had a lot of injuries. Maybe that's the thing here. Robert Saleh's influence is there. I know they have their defensive coordinator running things, but now he's distracted.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Great to have Jacob Camenker from USA Today in the house. And today we're going to break down some things that happened on Monday Night Football, but it's Tuesday. And so that means we already got to look ahead to Thursday. I mean, that's just what the NFL is. And great to have Jacob back here on the show. Jacob, great to catch up with you. Thanks for appearing again on NewsWire. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Craig. Glad to be here.
All right, so I was watching the World Series last night, just to keep it transparent here and just checking in on the score, and I saw field goal and field goal and field goal. I'm like, okay, that's the way I thought this game was going to go. And then all of a sudden, in the second half of the game, I mean, this thing went over the total. I was sort of shocked that happened, and I guess mostly because of Giants' mistakes. I guess that's fair to say. Mistakes happened. The Steelers took advantage of them. I take nothing away from Pittsburgh. Jacob, isn't it crazy how the names on the back of the Steelers jerseys change every year, but every year they win 9-10 games like clockwork? It's sort of incredible to me how well that franchise is run.
It really is, and I think it's a credit to not only the franchise, but the job Mike Tomlin is doing. He doesn't always get a lot of love because the team's playoff record in recent seasons has been spotty, but if you look at the job he's done with the rosters he's had over the last 5 years, to be able to get to the playoffs and to never have a losing season is pretty incredible. And I think his decision to start Russell Wilson over Justin Fields when the Steelers had a 4-2 record and were winning with Fields. I think that's going to go down as a really good decision. I was skeptical of it at first, but you look at how Russell Wilson fits in this offense. His deep ball ability has kind of unlocked George Pickens a little bit. He didn't have a huge game last night, but he did have 2 touchdowns called back, one for a penalty and one because he hopped on his same foot twice in bounds, but never got the other foot down. It was very strange. But he's shown better chemistry with Pickens' downfield ability there. And Calvin Austin is kind of becoming a weapon too because of his speed, almost like Tyler Lockett-esque, maybe not quite like that, but you're starting to see Russell Wilson kind of bounce back in this system. And I don't think that should be as big of a surprise as it really was to any of us because Tomlin just gets the most out of his guys. And if Russell Wilson continues to play like this, I think we're going to be looking at the Steelers and saying, hey, they might be able to win a playoff game in the AFC because that defense is really, really strong.
Yeah, I still think that TJ Watt is the most impactful player in the NFL, offensively or defensively. He is changing games in the NFL every single week. Yeah, I was skeptical too of Russell Wilson. I'm still skeptical. I know that he's now won a couple of games, but it was the Giants here. I'm not going to completely buy in until I see a good team. And speaking of which, I mean, Jacob, Giants, Jets, football in New York is not going well. We'll get to the Jets in a minute. You know, Brian Daboll takes over as head coach of the Giants a couple of years ago, and like we're crowning him as like this fantastic coach and things have gone well. And I mean, since then, it's completely been a disaster. And they say that it's not a quarterback league and there's other factors involved, but I don't know how you can even say that at this point in the NFL because Daniel Jones very clearly is in over his head as a starter in the league. He made some big mistakes yesterday again. I guess it was like a better game statistically from a completion percentage for him, 24 of 38 in the game. I would guess he's not going to start anymore, right? Like they'll probably make the change next week. That's my guess.
Given how frustrated Daboll was throughout the entirety of that game, every time they panned over to him on the sidelines, he was yelling about something or he just had like this sour look on his face all night. And he was not happy with the officiating either, I don't think. But when the Giants ran that 2-point conversion attempt late in the game where they had pretty much everyone split out wide, we were looking at it from a perspective of they had the blockers needed and just none of their guys went off with the snap. I think that's the kind of frustration you're seeing with Daboll right now is he's seeing things not come together. So I do think we are nearing a potential change. Maybe you give Drew Lock a chance and just say, hey, we got to see what this guy can do, and maybe he'll turn the ball over less than Jones because Jones has some of the skills needed to be a starting quarterback, but he just turns the ball over way too much, takes way too many sacks. There's too many negative plays. It's time for them to move on. And I feel bad for Daboll because he's kind of been hitched to this wagon. I would like to see what he could do with a better quarterback.
Yeah, and a running back, which he used to have. All right, I want to get to the trade deadline, but first I want to do Thursday Night Football real quick because this is like the hysterical line of the week. Like someone's going to be really wrong here picking this game because it's like, it's funny to me. The Jets take on the Houston Texans, and the Jets are at home. And initially, after watching last week's games, you would ask yourself, okay, what's the line in this game? Houston at New York. You'd be like, all right, Jets probably, they're not good. No home field advantage. I don't know, Houston -1, maybe a pick 'em. Jets -2 Thursday night against the Houston Texans, total of 42. I feel like we're all getting suckered into taking Houston here, Jacob, right? Like that's got to be the deal. Jets are winning this game, right? Thursday night.
I think so because I saw the line and immediately was like, that cannot be right. Like I don't want to back the Jets. And I think that's what everyone's thinking. They're looking at them coming off a loss to the Patriots and they're saying they can't beat the Texans, but I think the Texans, they've won games this year, but they're a little overrated right now just because they're missing Nico Collins. And without him, their offense isn't nearly as explosive. The Colts came close to beating them last week. It was only a 3-point game, and Anthony Richardson didn't have the best game statistically. But if that passing offense had just connected on a couple more plays, we might be talking about this game a little differently. So I think with Nico Collins out of the lineup, and Stephon Diggs is also banged up. He might not play because of a knee injury. You ask yourself, can C.J. Stroud and Tank Dell move the ball on a Jets secondary that, when healthy, is pretty good with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed? I think that's why this line is the way it is. So I'm backing the Jets, even though I don't want to, because I think that they're trying to sucker people into taking the Texans.
Yeah, it's got to be the case. By the way, real quick on the trade deadline, one name that's come up as a possibility for Houston Deontay Johnson, who hasn't played for Cleveland. By the way, Cleveland's gotten some, Carolina. Carolina's gotten some pretty good performances from their backup receivers. I think that they're going to trade Johnson. Any other anticipation as far as trades are concerned? We have about a week to go.
I would keep an eye on Johnson. I think he's probably the most likely to be moved because he's on an expiring deal, and there are a lot of teams that need receivers. You look at the Buccaneers and the Commanders stand out as guys who could use a number 2 receiver. I would keep an eye on Travis Etienne, too. I know he's been injured and ineffective this year, but his abilities as a pass-catching back could make him pretty valuable to a contender. So keep an eye on the Chiefs and Cowboys there. They could use a little bit of a shot in the arm for their backfields.
All right, good stuff. And Jacob's been picking the games real well this year. If you want to tail his picks, just go to usatoday.com or follow him on social media. Jacob, great job as always. We'll talk again soon.
All right, thanks, Craig. Take care.
We'll be right back. Don't go away.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Look, Aaron Rodgers, it does seem like he really enjoys, people like us, Vinny, talking about him.
I don't know what's going on here with Aaron Rodgers. I think there's some frustration settling in, and the Jets were not supposed to be this bad of a defense, right? They've had a lot of injuries. Maybe that's the thing here. Robert Saleh's influence is there. I know they have their defensive coordinator running things, but now he's distracted.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. One quick note before we get to Last Licks. In one of those stories where you already thought he was retired, Rudy Gay, all-star in the NBA after 18 seasons, he played 18 years, announced his retirement today officially. So congrats to Rudy Gay. Almost 2 decades of NBA basketball, decides to call it quits. All right, we got to call it quits here on the show, but we'll do so with some notes here from the National Basketball Association and an NIL deal, in addition to one of your favorite cartoons. Time for some Last Licks. Yes, The Simpsons are still on the air. I believe it has been more than 30 years, if I'm not mistaken. The Simpsons still on the air. That is incredible. So guess what? Kind of like they have done with these alternate broadcasts on Nickelodeon, Thanksgiving and Christmas Day, they're doing a Simpsons-themed NFL game broadcast on Monday Night Football. It will be December 9th against the Cincinnati Bengals, Dallas Cowboys. It will be the premiere of the Simpsons Fun Day Football, and I'm told it will be an animated game transformed in real time to the iconic Simpsons world. Now, for those of you who have been on social media, you've seen The Simpsons transformed the opposite into the real world, from Simpsons cartoon to what it would look like in AI, right? But in this case, this definitely has a new twist. So with all of the alternate broadcasts available to you, Manningcast, Statcast, whatever it is, if you're a Simpsons fan, I'm going to guess that this will be for you. And again, a game that they need to add something to, probably, because I would guess that on Monday night, December the 9th, both Dallas Cowboys and Cincinnati Bengals are not going to be thinking about the playoffs at this time. Neither team is having a good season. You know who's having a bad season and it hasn't even started? Joel Embiid. What? Yes. Joel Embiid is having a bad start to his season and it hasn't played. This is like clerks getting fired on your day off. Joel Embiid has yet to play a game during the season, but has already been assessed a technical foul. This is true. He has a knee injury. He has been out. But when the Sixers played against the Pacers, guard Andrew Nembhard was attempting a free throw late in overtime, and Embiid decided to pick up a towel and wave it to distract him. And officials didn't call him for it during the game, but of course, they got video on it. Somebody must have alerted NBA officials, and they ended up giving him a technical foul. So Joel Embiid is going to have to pay. He's got a ton of money. He's going to, like us giving somebody like $1 or $2. But regardless of which, earning a technical without even playing, which is kind of crazy. So gets it for that. And when he comes back, I believe there's only a certain amount of technicals you can get without being suspended. So hopefully Joel Embiid's not waving any towels in the future. All right, Cooper Flagg is going to have a lot of towels to wave. You may have heard of him. He's one of the up-and-coming great college basketball players in the country. He's maybe the best. Going to be probably drafted 1, 2, or 3 in the next NBA draft. Again, his name is Cooper Flagg. If you're wondering where he plays on Duke University. Gatorade has signed their first ever men's NCAA NIL basketball player, and it is this player. For those of you who have not seen this player play, he is fantastic. Some people have compared him to a little bit of a smaller Wembanyama. We will see. Look, long way to go to determine that, but naturally, congrats to Gatorade for making this happen. We're going to see a lot more players enter college basketball getting paid, just like we are in college football. That's like the next shoe to drop here, is all of these college basketball players getting paid as well. All right, that'll do it for the show today. Thanks to Jacob Camenker from USA Today, Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News, and in addition, I want to thank Bill Bender from Sporting News as well for coming on the show. Let me get you set up for the rest of the day here on SportsGrid. We got the early line coming up next. You'll see me preview Game 4 of the World Series, and in addition, we got Scott Farrell, Coast to Coast. That's 3 o'clock Eastern, so make sure you stay tuned to that. Game time decisions at 6 p.m. Is it the end for the Yankees? Is it the beginning of a dynasty for the Dodgers? They will discuss at 6 p.m. Eastern. We've got in-game live game day coming your way after that. And then Sports Rage tonight. Is Gabe back from his extravaganza yet? From visiting L.A. and I think Seattle, I think I saw. Gabe was all over the country. Okay, so he is back tonight, so he'll be on that show as well. Thanks to Luke for doing a great job today, directing, producing, doing everything here on the program. I'm Craig Mish. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the show. So tomorrow I will see you at 11 a.m. Eastern for our next edition of NewsWire. We'll see if we have a new World Series champion. We'll get closer to the week in college football and, of course, the NFL and preview all that as well. We got some great guests lined up for you. So I hope to see you then. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night. Keep it locked here to SportsGrid the rest of the day.